you're all leaders in your particular agencies. Sometimes you're founders in your particular agencies. I'm really keen to get from you how you think the conversation around gender has evolved from, the Me Too movement to openness, and calling out just how few women there are in both the design industry in general and also at senior roles in it. What do you think the problems are? Rosanna, do you want to start?
Sure. I think actually a lot of the problems are twofold. So one, if you look at it on the creative side, the way that the design industry and many industries tend to operate focuses on your ability to articulate your ideas, to put yourself forward, right? It's quite an extroverted role in some ways. And I think that's something that is not necessarily, taught to girls, to women as they grow up. There's always still a tendency to sort of, let's sit back and listen to the others. So I think that means that perhaps on the creative side, if you're looking at creative directors, there is still a dominance, I think, of men. On the flip side, I don't think the design industry is great in terms of teaching the management of design, right? And the other side of, like, how do we get into business? How do we start to manage people from an HR perspective? And what it means is that it's kind of actually quite naive, I suppose, or nascent compared to some other industries where that's the case. And it sort of creates this imbalance, I think, that if you go into a creative director, you've got to be you've got to push, you've got to be an extrovert. That doesn't suit everybody. And on the flip side, there isn't much of a structure around the other management and kind of HR aspects that I think support women. So it's a competitive game in that respect. You've got to kind of, you've got to have the right, I suppose, character to get ahead, whether you're a man or a woman in that respect.
Sue, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I would also add into the kind of the sort of sides of it is that you kind of have to look at how the business runs itself as well. And I think we're seeing much more flexibility. I think one good thing that's come out of COVID is that it's forced us all to reappraise ourselves, male or female, about how flexible we can actually be in our working lives. And we've seen a lot of women especially being able to actually manage things better because they're more in control of how they have to kind of engage, interact with the day-to-day. And it's forcing businesses and design businesses to really think and reframe how they look at inviting and engaging all types of individuals, whether it's working parents, male or female, mothers, women who are coming back into the work to actually offer that flexibility. To Rosanna's point, when we look at kind of overall the industry as a whole, what's quite interesting, when you look at advertising, males are highly more dominant. I think there's only like 3% creative directors that are female in that category specifically. But when you start to move into brand design and more kind of craft-based designs, actually women do tend to appear a lot more. And it's quite interesting at the shift. And I think it goes to what Rosanna was saying about the kind of attitude and character you have to portray as a female in those industries. In advertising, you do have to be more kind of aggressive, I think, in those categories. And I think we see in our world of branding and some of the design areas that actually women have got the ability to be who they really are and don't have to put false personas on them.
What do you think, Chloe? Is that your experience?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I totally agree with what the guys are saying. I think seeing is believing. I think the more women that we see in the leadership roles, the more it feels attainable to the people coming through. When I was a junior, it was mostly males. It was really male dominated. Obviously, Sue was a creative director when I was just a junior, and you were amazing. You were badass. You were quite intimidating, and actually to the point that you said before about being more of an alpha. You certainly were that, and I think that was probably about 15 years ago now. And I think it's really interesting to see, I think, as my career from a junior to see, one creative director with Sue being super alpha and owning the room, to then being a creative director myself, and how that kind of, I don't feel that need to be super alpha. And I do think that is a sign of the times. And I think it's great that there are more women in leadership roles that are kind of encouraging that. And I think it's not just about at the design level. I think certainly at Design Bridge, we've got top women in as MD, Chief Creative Officer, Executive Creative Directors. And I think it's that leading with that brilliant mix of the kind of commercial, but also cultural awareness, and being allowed to be empathetic and open and inclusive and almost kind of lead in a way that maybe hasn't really been seen before. And I think certainly, you know, I've only got the last kind of 13 years experience, but I definitely see a shift in how women are being allowed to lead, or actually being encouraged to just embrace it. And I think that was something for me that when I finally realized that I was allowed to kind of lead how I would lead and how kind of I wanted to, and I don't need to be the loudest or the sort of the dominant male character, and I can actually just lean into those amazing characteristics that females do bring to the table, that almost hopefully that will then encourage the next generation of, you know, men as well as women to just to kind of lead the way that they want to.
So Natasha, I know that you feel very strongly about on this subject, but I thought that was some really interesting comments from Chloe and Rosanna and Sue, particularly around the sort of empathy bit, which I suppose I've thought about, but I think you made that really sort of strongly. And also, Sue, your point about women being able to multitask and order things better. That's a sort of particular skill set that you seem to have. What do you think, Natasha? Or have I got it completely wrong?
No, I think that's absolutely right. And I also think that there is a perception that when mothers come back into the workplace, you're going to be getting some kind of shadow of their former selves that's a bit sort of frazzled and harried. And I believe that if women can multitask in general, let's make a generalization, mothers can get more out of every minute than you could possibly imagine. And yeah, it takes multitasking to another level. So I think there's a perception that women coming back into the workplace, they won't be as good, but I'd say that maybe they can be better. And I think that the other thing that Chloe said about seeing is believing, I really believe that. And I think part of the answer is the demonstrative and active universal taking up by men of parental leave. And I think demonstrable is really important. I think everybody needs to see it and hear men talk about it. And loads of companies offer it now, but the taking up of it is not the norm, because there's so much unsaid stigma. I've heard so many stories of men's managers raising their eyebrows at the choice, or even being asked passively aggressively, how's that going to affect your career? And not only will this perpetuate women staying at home and not re-entering the workforce, but the longer term ramifications are bigger than I think they seem at first. Because if a man takes proper parental leave or flexible working just to be with his baby, I'm talking real time, not 14 days, he'll build the same type of bond with his baby as the mother does when she spends all of her time with the baby at the beginning. And then the man will establish that responsibility of parenting as an equal responsibility. And the woman won't be the only one who actually truly knows how to look after the baby and knows where the socks are and all of that stuff. And that ultimately enables both of them to pursue their careers equally. And I think that's what we're wanting. We want equality in the workforce, not necessarily female dominance.